Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. The Miami Dolphins have once again found themselves at the center of a storm, and this time it's not just about their winless start to the season. What's making headlines around the league right now are the swirling rumors about Tyreek Hill, their superstar wide receiver, and whether the team made a massive mistake by not pulling the trigger on a trade while his market value was still high. Hill, one of the most electrifying playmakers in the NFL, has been surrounded by controversy both on and off the field in 2024, and now executives around the league are openly questioning if Miami held on too long. According to a recent report from The Athletic, one unnamed NFL executive put it bluntly, saying the Dolphins should have made their move last year when Hill's trade value was at its peak. The quote was as cold as it was direct. Tyreek's value for a trade was last year. The money, off-field accusations, and instability would scare me off. He is talented, but that is a huge gamble for any type of valuable pick. You need to do a lot of homework before you make that decision. That type of commentary hits differently because it doesn't just question Hill as a player. It questions Hill as an asset, and more importantly, the Dolphins as decision-makers. When you zoom out and look at Miami's situation, the picture isn't pretty. They've stumbled out of the gate to a 0-3 start, with fans growing restless and a primetime matchup against the equally winless New York Jets looming on Monday Night Football. Instead of the focus being on how Mike McDaniel's team can turn things around, all the talk is about whether the Dolphins should have cashed in on their biggest star before his baggage became too heavy for other teams to overlook. For a franchise trying desperately to prove it belongs among the NFL's elite, this kind of distraction is the last thing they need. Now, let's break down why Hill's market is in such a complicated spot. First, you've got the off-field accusations, which came to light earlier this September. His estranged wife leveled domestic violence allegations against him, and while Hill has denied any wrongdoing and hasn't been criminally charged, the stigma alone has teams nervous. In today's NFL, where public relations nightmares can overshadow wins and losses, franchises are often hesitant to attach themselves to players with unresolved controversies. That hesitation gets amplified when you factor in Hill's contract, which is one of the heftiest among wideouts in the league. The combination of legal uncertainty, financial burden, and concerns about locker room culture creates a perfect storm that lowers his value in the eyes of rival executives. And speaking of locker room culture, Hill hasn't exactly been setting the gold standard there either. Reports surfaced earlier this month about ongoing culture issues in Miami under McDaniel, and Hill's name was directly tied to them. He was reportedly among the repeat offenders who racked up fines during the 2024 campaign for being late to practices and team meetings. That's not the kind of behavior you want from a veteran leader who's supposed to set the tone for a young roster. Then you add in the memory of January's meltdown, when Hill famously took himself out of Miami's regular season finale and later had to apologize. It paints a picture of a player who, despite his world-class talent, may not always be the easiest to manage. On the field, Hill's numbers through the first 3 games of the season haven't exactly screamed irreplaceable. Sure, 15 receptions for 198 yards and a touchdown is solid production, but it's far from the game-breaking dominance fans saw from him in previous seasons. He's 31 years old now, and while speed has always been his greatest weapon, Father Time doesn't wait for anyone. Even if Hill still has flashes of his old self, teams have to weigh the risk of decline alongside all the other concerns. That's why, when The Athletic spoke with 13 different executives and coaches about his trade value, the majority of them weren't overly optimistic. 6 of them pegged his worth at no more than a third-round pick, while some even thought he'd be downgraded to a 4th or 5th rounder. Only one voice suggested Miami might be able to squeeze a second-rounder out of a desperate buyer, but even that seemed like wishful thinking. Think about how wild that is for a second. This is Tyreek Hill we're talking about, one of the most dynamic receivers in the NFL over the last decade, a guy who used to command double teams and flip games on a single play. And yet here we are in 2025, with his name being floated around in the same sentence as mid-round draft pick compensation. That's the reality of how quickly things can change in the league. When you're on top, you're untouchable. But 1 or 2 controversies, a couple of down performances, and suddenly the narrative shifts from, how many first-rounders can we get for this guy? So would anyone even give us a third-rounder? It's a humbling reminder of how fragile value can be in the NFL ecosystem. Of course, all of this speculation doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's fueled by the fact that the Dolphins are 0-3 and facing a crisis of identity. If they were sitting at 3-0 right now, nobody would be talking about Tyreek Hill trades. Winning cures everything, and the conversation would be about how Hill's explosiveness was helping Miami steamroll opponents. Instead, with the losses piling up, every flaw gets magnified. Every late arrival to practice becomes a headline. Every off-field accusation becomes a debate topic, and every underwhelming stat line becomes proof that maybe, just maybe, it's time to move on. And yet, Miami still holds the power to change the narrative. Their upcoming schedule isn't exactly daunting, starting with a Jets team that's also desperate and reeling at 0-3. If the Dolphins can notch a win on Monday night and then follow it up with a victory against the struggling Carolina Panthers, suddenly they're sitting at 2-3 and right back in the mix. 2 straight wins could silence the trade talk, at least temporarily, and give McDaniel and his team a chance to regroup. But if the losing continues, those whispers about Hill's future will only grow louder, and Miami may find itself forced into a decision it never wanted to make. The Kansas City Chiefs and Pittsburgh Steelers have been linked to Hill as potential suitors, and both make sense for different reasons. The Chiefs, of course, are the team that originally unleashed Hill on the NFL, pairing him with Patrick Mahomes to form one of the most dangerous quarterback-receiver duos of all time. A reunion in Kansas City would be a storyline for the ages, though it's hard to see them paying much given their own cap constraints and roster-building philosophy. The Steelers, on the other hand, are a team constantly searching for offensive firepower to balance out their hard-nosed defense. Adding Hill could give them the type of game-breaking ability they've lacked in recent years, but again, the question comes down to cost and risk tolerance. For now, though, the Dolphins aren't ready to wave the white flag on 2025. Trading away their biggest star before the season even truly takes shape would send a terrible message to the locker room and the fan base. It would scream desperation, and that's not the tone you want to set this early. At the same time, Miami's brass can't ignore the warning signs. Every game, every headline, and every rumor chips away at Hill's value. And if they wait too long, they could find themselves in a position where they're forced to cut ties for pennies on the dollar. That's the balancing act they're dealing with. Hold on and hope for a turnaround, or cut bait before things spiral completely out of control. In the end, this entire saga is a reflection of just how complicated NFL roster management really is. It's never just about talent, because talent alone doesn't win championships. It's about culture, stability, cap management, and timing. Tyreek Hill is still a top-tier player, but the Dolphins now face the reality that his presence might be as much a liability as it is an asset. Whether they keep him or eventually trade him, the decision will define not just the rest of their 2025 season, but potentially the trajectory of the franchise for years to come. And as the lights shine bright on Monday Night Football, the stakes couldn't be higher. For Hill, for McDaniel, and for an organization desperately searching for answers. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Fins this week? Rumors have been swirling around the NFL landscape for weeks now, but the latest one seems too hot to ignore. Word on the street is that Keenan Allen, one of the most precise and reliable wide receivers in the league, has officially inked a deal with the Miami Dolphins. If this isn't a game-changer for the Dolphins offense, it's hard to imagine what is. Picture this, a team that's been hovering just below elite status now potentially getting a weapon that can stretch the field, open up the passing game, and give Tua Tagovailoa, or whoever is under center, a trusted target in crucial moments. The very idea has fans buzzing from South Beach to the NFL's farthest corners. Allen, known for his impeccable route running, soft hands, and uncanny ability to find the open space where defenders fear to tread, seems like the missing piece that could elevate Miami from a playoff contender to a Super Bowl threat. And let's be honest, in the rumor mill that is professional football, there's always a chance that the deal evolves or terms shift, but the sheer possibility alone is enough to set imaginations on fire. The Dolphins' offensive scheme has always been dynamic, but it has often lacked that consistent, go-to presence at wide receiver. Sure, They've had flashes of brilliance, with players who could make defenders look silly and electrify the crowd. But something about Allen feels different. This isn't just about stats, although his numbers speak volumes. It's about the presence and poise he brings. In a league where quarterbacks are judged by the talent around them, Keenan Allen might just be the anchor Miami's offense has been yearning for. Imagine the matchup nightmares this could create. Linebackers trying to cover him one-on-one, cornerbacks scrambling to adjust their coverage schemes, safeties hesitating just a fraction too long because Allen is the type of receiver who doesn't just win with speed or size, but with intelligence and anticipation. The strategic headaches for opposing defenses could be monumental, and the Dolphins coaching staff, which has always had an eye for maximizing offensive efficiency, likely sees this as a golden opportunity. And speaking of strategy, there's an undeniable synergy brewing between Allen and the Dolphins' current offensive weapons. You've got explosive playmakers in the backfield, tight ends who can stretch the seam, and now, potentially, a receiver who thrives in every route tree imaginable. It's one of those scenarios that could make opposing defensive coordinators lose sleep. When Allen's name is thrown into the mix, suddenly the entire playbook feels alive with possibilities. Deep posts, quick outs, crossing patterns, slants. The whole package becomes more dangerous. And Miami fans, who have been waiting for a moment like this, are already imagining the highlight reels, the clutch catches, the third down conversions that swing games. Of course, this is still fresh, and the NFL is nothing if not unpredictable. But just the prospect of Keenan Allen suiting up in aqua and orange is enough to send ripples through the league. Now let's talk impact. On paper, this move doesn't just upgrade the Dolphins' receiving core, it elevates the entire offense. A receiver of Allen's caliber doesn't just catch passes, he creates space for others, he changes the timing of routes, he opens up opportunities for tight ends and running backs. Every defensive plan suddenly has to account for him. Tua, or whoever is calling plays under center, would have a weapon who doesn't just command attention but demands it. That kind of presence can transform a team's identity. Miami has always flirted with offensive explosions, but consistency has been a challenge. With Allen, there's a sense that they might finally have that reliable, elite target who can turn a good offense into a great one. And if we're talking about the playoffs, the stakes suddenly feel different. Defenders will need to respect every inch of the field, every throw, every pre-snap movement. Allen's reputation for precise timing and impeccable route discipline makes him a quarterback's dream and a defensive coordinator's nightmare. Of course, there's always the human element. Keenan Allen has been in the league long enough to understand the pressure, the expectations, and the limelight that comes with being a key piece in a high-profile offense. He's not just a player. He's a professional who knows how to adjust, how to read defenses, and how to thrive under the spotlight. Miami isn't just gaining his talent. They're gaining his experience, his football IQ, and his leadership. Younger players in the locker room will have a blueprint for professionalism, preparation, and execution in one of the NFL's most scrutinized markets. That kind of influence, while less tangible than a highlight reel catch, can be just as transformative over the course of a season. Rumors suggest that his arrival is already reshaping training camp expectations, play-calling meetings, and even the energy in the locker room. When a player like Allen joins a team, it's rarely just about what he does on Sundays. It's about the culture he can help build. There's also the fan excitement factor, which cannot be understated. Miami has always had passionate fans, but the city is ready for a star of Allen's caliber to make waves. Expect merchandise lines, jersey sales, social media buzz, and a tangible energy shift that reverberates beyond the stadium. Social media is already speculating on his fit with Miami's offensive identity, and every analyst, blogger, and armchair GM is weighing in. That's how rumors become legends, and even before the first snap, Allen's presence is commanding headlines, analysis, and endless chatter. There's something electric about that anticipation, that sense of a new era dawning, that makes even casual fans tune in to see if the hype matches reality. Of course, skeptics will always exist. Some will question the fit, wondering if Allen's style complements Miami's current roster and offensive philosophy. Others will point to injuries, age, or the unpredictability of transition periods. But if history tells us anything, it's that a player of Allen's skill set rarely struggles to make an immediate impact. His route running, catching consistency, and football intelligence don't fade overnight. If the Dolphins can surround him with solid protection, smart play calling, and complementary skill players, there's every reason to believe he could be the catalyst that turns a good offense into one of the league's elite units. And let's not forget the ripple effect across the league. When a player of Keenan Allen's caliber changes teams, defensive coordinators start recalibrating. Other wide receivers feel the pressure to match or counter his impact, and suddenly the entire AFC, and perhaps beyond, is watching closely. Miami might have just shifted the balance of power, and while we can't predict outcomes, the implications are tantalizing. The idea that this signing could make Miami a legitimate Super Bowl contender isn't just speculation. It's a narrative that seems increasingly plausible with every discussion, mock scenario, and practice report. All of this, of course, exists in the space between rumor and reality. The official word may trickle out in stages, but the excitement, the speculation, and the buzz are already at a fever pitch. Fans, analysts, and players alike are talking about matchups, stats, and the potential for highlight reel plays that could define careers. Miami, a team always hungry for offensive firepower, may have finally found a receiver who doesn't just catch the ball, but elevates the entire game around him. If Keenan Allen is truly headed to South Beach, the NFL might be witnessing one of those quietly seismic shifts that fans will be talking about for years. The Dolphins' offense is about to get another level, and while only time will tell if it fully materializes, the rumor alone is enough to get pulse rates up, conversations flowing, and imaginations running wild. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.